Hey there, it's Carly with the Expat Focus podcast. Are you dreaming of just packing up your life for an adventure abroad? In this episode, you'll hear from a couple that did just that. They made the decision to move from the UK to Oman, and in just a few weeks, they were off. Teacher Sheri and author Matt will explain how they navigated getting the right visas, adhering to the local dress code, and working culture. You'll also find out about the cost of living in Oman, how easy it is to make friends with locals, and what they believe makes the country such a great place for expats. Oman is really known for having a strong expat population. Can I ask what brought you both to the country?
Well, to start, it was my mother came over 18 years ago to Oman. She had never heard of Muscat. She was at a time in her life where my parents had divorced, and she kind of wanted to travel. My brother and I were living abroad, and she thought, well, let me just go and see what this place Oman is all about. And she's been here ever since. So it started off with me coming over to visit her on holidays, and I just fell in love with the country, really. And I remember my first visit to see her. I said to her, I want to live here one day. I just love the houses and the architecture and the lifestyle and the weather. And I remember her saying to me, yes, but working here is very different to coming on holiday, and it's hard. And she wanted me to stay where I was because I had a good job in London, and I think she was worried that I was gonna up sticks and come and join her. But so it started from there. And and then obviously I'd bring Matt over on holiday with me to visit my mom, and he also fell in love with the place. And then one day, what happened?
Yeah, we had kind of reached a point in our careers a couple of years ago where we'd done pretty well. Sheri was running a department in a school, and I had a martial arts school, and I was also moving towards writing. And we were just at that stage. My two children, my two children were grown up now. So we're at that kind of turning point. And it literally looked at each other in the lounge one day and said, should we go? Should we go and have a play somewhere? And that was it. 3 weeks later, pretty much, as she came earlier, and we sold all the stuff in our house. I was sleeping on less and less and less stuff. We just kind of eBayed and whatever, got rid of everything, and that was it. We just thought, let's go and play somewhere else. So here we are.
That's amazing. I think a lot of people dream of doing that, just making that decision and doing it, not thinking too much. I guess for you, Sheri, you knew where you were going. You had experience of being there before. So it wasn't like you were heading to somewhere. And the same with you, Matt, you'd visited before. So you had some familiarity with where you were going to land, I suppose.
Yeah. And coming out though, that 5 years ago, whatever, I had a little taste of the pressures and, the work life here as well, which kind of didn't put me off. It actually, all those years back, for the last 5 or whatever years before coming here, I did actually feel like there was a scratch that needed to be itched.
Yeah.
And now
it's well and truly resolved.
Matt
particular
jokes
scratch.
And says, has your itch been scratched yet?
Because you had done just a 3-month working stint in Oman.
Yes.
And so when you decided to make the move, did you need a visa? Did you have to apply to be able to come and live in Oman?
Yes. So the rules here are pretty strict. You basically have to find a job first, and then, there are other ways of doing it. You can come over first on holiday and then find a job here, and then sort your visa out. The school or the company will sort your visa out when you're here. It just means leaving the country again and then coming back in on your work visa. But I was lucky enough to have all of that sorted for me. Yes, it was pretty easy. A little bit more tricky for Matt, but maybe just a few months, and then everything was sorted for him. But the decision to pack up and come here literally was 3 to 4 weeks, and
Yeah.
we were here, and then everything kind of fell into place.
We do live a little bit like that, which I don't recommend to the to anyone sensible. Would make those decisions just to it's a little bit kind of spiritual, if you like, where we just make the decision first and trust things to fall into place, even the logistical things which are not governed by anything spiritual. They're actual physics, but we've kind of always operated like that, so we just went. But then when we get here, there's quite a lot of red tape, because although we've been together, we're both divorced, as it were, so we're not officially married, we've been together.
Okay.
So I couldn't get a family visa. So of course in England we are considered married. We are, you know what I mean, in your head sort of, but that's not the same. We're in a Muslim country,
Right?
So they're not the same rules. So now you have to work around that. Now they wouldn't matter at home, but here they do matter. So then I had to find another way. So I had to find a sponsor who would then give me a job. As it turns out, is a friend of mine who works at a martial arts place, who then hired me, if you like, to be a martial arts teacher. So we got around it. There is always ways around it, but you do have to think outside the box here, because it's not always done for you.
I was going to ask, Matt, because you are an author, I assume that means you're an entrepreneur, you're self-employed. So how did you go about, especially if you both aren't married and, as you said, Muslim country, how did you go about making sure you could come with Sheri and actually be able to stay?
Yeah, well, initially I came on I've always come on 3-month visitors visas, which mean at the end of that, I just then drive out of the country to, where's the next place?
It's Hatta border, which is about a 2-3 hour drive.
Yeah. You go there, have coffee, turn around and get stamped, which is fine. And we planned to come here for a couple of years, which has now changed. And I was happy doing that every 90 days. Of course, COVID hit.
Right.
Now, you couldn't get out of the country. Well, you could, but I then couldn't necessarily get back in. So now I'm sitting here going, well, I don't need to move anywhere because of restrictions, but if you don't go out in time, you get a fine. And I wondered, am I mounting up thousands of pounds worth of fine at best, worse, being deported because of COVID? As it turns out, that wasn't the case at all. They were the restrictions. We went to the official offices and they said, just sit tight, all good, let's wait what happens. And then this kind of serendipitous meeting with this man at this MMA place said, I'll sponsor you. You can be one of my coaches. And then
amazing.
So now, and 2 weeks ago, I got my residence card
so
here.
So officially legal.
So we don't have to
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's a great feeling just to have a bit more of a solid base there too.
It hadn't really mattered to me. I didn't think. I wasn't that bothered. Sheri was much more bothered about it because, of course, as a South African, they don't stay in their own countries for about more than 5 minutes, do they? So they're everywhere. So she was used to that. And I didn't really think I was that bothered until I got the card. And then I was like, oh, that actually feels really, really good. Something in me relaxed, which I hadn't known was tight. And it was a nice feeling. Yeah, it was good.
Definitely.
A lot of couples who come over, there's also, even if we were married, legally married, there would still be a problem because it's the woman cannot put the husband on her visa anyway. Okay. So other way around, if it was Matt who had the teaching job or whatever, I would be able to go on his visa.
But so you would have had the same problem because you were the one with the job.
It would have made it a little bit easier, I think, but it just because of the rules. So a lot of women actually come over without their spouses. I know 3 or 4 people that have come over without their spouses, and their husbands come over on holiday every so often, or they come for a few weeks, then they go back home. So I know a few cases like that because of the difficulties, but I don't think it's as difficult as some other countries to
Well, I am curious about that because Oman is a Gulf state. I know of a lot of people living in Dubai, for example, and that it's quite a liberal country, a cosmopolitan country by, I suppose, Middle Eastern Muslim country standards. What have you had to navigate aside from the partner and visa issues, being in a Muslim country?
for me, both of us really is the obvious dress code. It's not as strict as some other Muslim countries, but our dress code at my school where I work is particularly quite strict. So we have to just manage that. So my whole wardrobe has been changed.
And that means long sleeves, long skirts.
Long sleeves. The floatier, the better. We
No,
don't.
I try to stay away from the floaty skirts. For me, particularly, they don't fit my body type as such.
So those little things. Even Matt had before there would be no problem for him to go running into the mall with shorts on or whatever. But one day he was stopped not so long ago and asked to. They didn't allow him in with shorts, so he said, "Can I just run upstairs and buy a pair of tracksuit bottoms?" So they let him run in. He went, bought a pair of tracksuit bottoms, put them on, and then he was allowed to be in the mall. Yeah. So that, but then there's other places where it's more relaxed, like on the beaches and the hotels and things like that, obviously. But and again, it's not as strict as some of the other Muslim countries.
Do you need to cover your hair, Sheri, or is that not a requirement?
I need to go into the
to the mosque,
to the main mosque that you can go and visit here, the Sultan Qaboos Mosque. You have to cover up, completely cover up. But otherwise, the dress code isn't too bad. That's easy to deal with. What other things have we encountered?
The biggest thing to navigate for me is inshallah.
Inshallah
means essentially God willing or hopefully, which is the same as the Spanish mañana. So you first get, you come from the UK or wherever else where you're used to things working quite well. Here there's a lot more, we just kind of see how it goes. And that can be incredibly frustrating. There are some places in the world that are so foreign, if you like the Far East here, that they're a real cultural shift. Like you're in France, right? And if you go from the UK to the France, they're on the whole the same. The weather's the same, language, you can pick up stuff. They're similar, right? They're not very, very foreign. Some places, let's say Japan, here, Africa, are so different culturally that you have to get used to their style. And here it's very kind of, we just see how it goes. So you need to be prepared for everything to take 84 times longer than it should. Relax into that and actually kind of get lost in that. If you can get used to that, it's an incredibly fun place to be. If you can't, it's just constantly stressful.
Does this mean things like if you have an appointment at 10 a.m.?
Yes. What time?
So I'll be there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Okay. Be there at 9 o'clock, 9:45, still not coming. Yeah. No, I'm on my way. Just 5 minutes, 20 minutes later. Anyway, but then saying that, other things like, for example, here in the summer, you do not want your air conditioning units to break down. You cannot have no AC on. So just for example, if one of them breaks down, you call somebody and they are literally there within 20 minutes.
Yeah, and they will also could be here at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So so it's a very different way of living. It's incredibly different.
So
inshallah applies to everything except life-threatening things like air conditioning.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's a real kind of contrast of styles. It's fascinating, but you do have to get your head around it when you come from a classic kind of Western A goes to Z and all the letters in between. That isn't the case here.
And Sheri, what about school culture? I know you're a teacher. What's different about the education system and your daily work in Oman compared to your working in London before, I believe?
Yeah. Have you got 3 hours?
How long is the podcast?
It blew my mind in the beginning. I won't lie. I've got used to it now. They take the education here very seriously, but there's a lot of focus, top priority focus for grading children here, but from 4 years old.
Oh,
So,
wow. That sounds
so
very intense.
yes. So there's a lot of testing, a lot of, you know, giving these children A stars and Bs and Cs, and parents have a very, very high expectation for their children to do well. They don't see that a B and a C is still good.
Good.
They want
Yeah.
A's and the A stars, and in fact, they want the A stars more than the A's. A's sometimes is not good enough. But this is coming from very early on, right from the start of their school life. So it's kind of I've had to get used to that pressure from parents and from the, you know, management and stuff to test these children and try and do it in a way that's not upsetting them or stressing them out. And so that's been quite different, because I mean, yes, we do grades and things in England, but much later on in their school years. I think only really from grade 3
Yeah.
onward.
And it really only gets serious in high school, surely.
Yeah, very serious here. Like, you
Yeah.
know, they want to see evidence of why their child has not got an A star in English or maths, and so that side's been quite difficult. And the workload. I mean, the workload in England was tough, but here, I've never worked so hard in my life.
And you're teaching a lower level. I mean, you were talking about children that are 4 years old. I don't mean to say that teaching infants is an easy job, but
Teaching grade 1 this year, so they're 5 and 6 year olds. I teach 50 children, so I've got 2 classes of 25 children each. I teach the English and maths. Yeah, so it's they very young, but there's a lot of them, and our workload is massive, massive. So yeah, it's exhausting. I won't lie, it is exhausting, but it's and then obviously it's also extremely rewarding. And we've been online again for the last 4 weeks, which has been a challenge as well. But
because of the pandemic.
yeah, we have another spike here. It's been quite challenging. And also I arrived on the 31st of December 2020 and started work on the 5th of January, and then we were in lockdown from March. So
oh wow,
I haven't really had like a normal life here, really.
I really sympathize for anyone who has moved abroad in the COVID years. I mean, I had friends in London who were there from Australia, and at some point they just decided, you know what, this is not what our our expat experience was supposed to be. We're not able to go anywhere. We're not able to enjoy, you know, UK life and culture like we thought we would. So we're just going to go home.
Yeah.
Is that something that you both have considered in your last couple of years in Oman, or are you happy to just ride it out?
We actually have been saying quite a lot that we're not ready to go back to England.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a lie for me to even put myself in any level to suggest I'm working like Sheri. I'm living the dream. I wake up, meditate, write, take the dog out. I have got everything I've asked for. But that's the choice I made as a writer. I gave up my martial arts school at home just to write. So I am getting everything out of this, but I'm in a very selfish work. I mean, I'm an author. It's just me I have to entertain. So I'm very happy here, but we have been discussing, actually, we're not ready to go back. This is actually quite cool. We're happy being in this bubble, whether it's the kind of the, you know, pandemic bubble or just the Oman bubble. So we're going to, you know, sit tight for a couple of years and see where else to play after that.
And Matt, how have you found it essentially working solo? I mean, I guess the life of an author is a little bit solitary anyway, regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you're not, you know, but you can't go, for example, somewhere else to write. I don't know if co-working exists in Oman, but you can't go to a cafe and decide to do a bit of writing, or I assume networking with other entrepreneurs is kind of limited.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, the week COVID hit here, I was set to fly back for the book launch of my book, The How to Be a British Millionaire. And so I was all set up, go back to London, do a book tour, and that was all cancelled. So it kills those sort of things. Then I was supposed to go to, where was I going? Poland to do a talk. That was all killed. So it does shut down your platform building, which is necessary. So that's kind of the marketing of your books and the sort of, the platform work, as I say. But the actual writing stuff, I pretty much do wherever I want to do, which is great. I'm very lucky. We've got a huge house here. That isn't showing off. That is just because we've never lived in a huge house, and they're really cheap here.
And we wouldn't ever live in a house.
Yeah, we'd never live in it, and they're super cheap. So we often say we don't use 90% of this place either because the roofs are very high. So I get a chance to move around the house and just work from wherever I am. So I'm kind of very lucky. But you're right, the networking side has pretty much died off, although it's coming back a little bit more and more. But we have been able to do that online, book clubs and, publisher networks, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's fine. We got over it.
Speaking of houses, I'm curious about the cost of living in Oman, because I know, for example, in places like Dubai, it's not exactly cheap, but then there's like tax efficient. Until recently, I guess they're bringing in more taxes in Dubai and the UAE now, but there are reasons why foreigners go to these countries. And you mentioned that housing is quite cheap. So what sort of living costs can foreigners expect when they move to Oman?
Well, the accommodation and petrol are super.
You just want to fill your car up because you've never before filled your car up and it's gone, how much did you say that wasn't? That's amazing. That's the fun thing to do.
It's amazing. Like 18 pounds to fill up a big 4x4 car. Yeah.
Oh, it's so exciting.
So and like we said, the rent here is, well, we think it's really, I mean, it is a big house. We call it the mansion on the hill because it looks, as you're driving up the hill, you just see our house, and it's gorgeous, and it's got a massive garden, and it's lovely. For half of what we were paying for a
flat,
tiny flat in London. So very reasonable. So accommodation, petrol, great.
Everything else is crippling. Everything else is crippling. We came unstuck. We thought we'd come here 2 years for a bit of a play, save some money. We both work hard, save some money, get a bigger deposit, come back home, buy a house. Right? That was the master plan. No, that did not happen. As I said, the housing and the petrol is cheap. Some food's cheap. The rest, we're really surprised. It's more expensive than England.
Is it because they're essentially needing to import everything? I mean, I read somewhere that if you want to live a Western lifestyle in a Middle Eastern country, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And also because it's not just you wanting to live a Western lifestyle in a Middle Eastern country. They want to live a Western style in a Middle Eastern country. So a lot of the places, even for the shops that are offering stuff for the Omanis, want the Western feel. The old traditional, as it is around the world. I can't speak of the smaller Muslim countries. I don't know. I haven't been there. But from what I read, more and more they're wanting kind of the Western feel, which is both heartbreaking and kind of enlightening at the same time. You've got this mixed losing culture and then gaining another culture, but it is expensive.
It is expensive.
So what do you do to try to minimize costs? Like I did read that if you eat Middle Eastern or Asian foods, you're going to be having a much lower grocery bill than if you're trying to find the baked beans in the supermarket, for example.
Yeah, we just we don't overspend on anything, and food wise we're both pretty what is it?
Food for us is energy between jobs.
We could live on.
Do you know what I mean? It's like something we have to do to stay alive. Yeah. We're not foodies, so we don't spend loads on going out and stuff like that.
So, but and like you say, we do get quite a lot of takeout, but the takeout here is really good. So curry's the best curry in the whole world.
Fantastic.
Really good curry, but not like your rubbish curry.
Yeah, not like
It's-
British high street curry.
it's
Proper, it's the
really
most
good.
fantastic, you know, real.
And reasonable,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then that can sometimes last us for 2 or 3 nights. So we're terrible like
Because
that.
leftovers are awesome.
Yeah. And like we get a lot of local Turkish restaurant takeaways here. They're very good and also really, really, really reasonable.
Yeah.
So if you want to do, and it's, you know, healthy and it's not rubbish. So but yeah, we just careful, not like overly careful, but I'll go to the cheaper supermarkets rather than the kind of more expat supermarkets here. Like we have a supermarket called Alfair, which basically is Waitrose.
Okay. So
Get
that's
one bag.
that's where you go if you want to get some fancy.
Yes.
You're gonna get Marmite.
Marmite.
You got to go there.
Right.
No, with your accent, you won't even know that. It's going to be Vegemite for you.
Vegemite, exactly. No, but like, yeah, here in France too, like every Aussie needs to know where they can find Vegemite and Tim Tams. And the whole hack is that, you know, in Paris, in some of the Monoprix, you can find Tim Tams. In some cafes, they will sell Vegemite if it's like a cafe run by Aussies, because Aussie coffee culture is spreading around the world. Do you have your locations? This is the supermarket you go to for your British food?
Yes. So yeah. So Waitrose, Alfair if I want to get my favorite things. But then you have one bag of shopping which costs nearly £100 with just a few things inside.
With Marmite.
Bag of Marmite, exactly.
Then I can go to
And tea bags.
Lulu's is a massive supermarket where you can get everything. I don't think they have Marmite at Lulu's, but they do have some. Actually, they have more South African things there, so I can get all my favorite South African biscuits and crisps and things, and then you can get 4 or 5 bags for the same price.
Yeah.
So
that's like your Lidl. I don't know what you have in France, but that Carrefour. Do you have Carrefour in France?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that. Lulu is one down from. So Lulu, Carrefour, and then Alfair is you know, if you were going through the shopping experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Shopping here, supermarket shopping here is like, that's maybe one of my worst things to do. I hate it.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually really loved supermarket shopping when I first came to France, because everything was new and different, and I loved exploring the brands and, you know, the 3 aisles of cheese, for example.
Yeah. Well, that's France. It is France, of course.
I do remember in the beginning just walking up and down the aisles just thinking, wow, they've got everything, so much stuff. And now I'm like, oh, I have to go later as well. And I think, oh, do I have to go today? Can we just squeeze one more night?
One more day.
Yeah, exactly. Toast.
Well, now we're doing the click and collect. So we just order it online. We don't have to walk into a shop. It's the best. Yeah. I must be honest, I really didn't know even visually what Oman was like. And then a friend recently went there on holiday and posted some pictures on Instagram. And I was stunned, because there's like these beautiful oases in the desert, it seems like, of beautiful crystal clear blue watering holes and palm trees and that sort of thing. So can you tell me a little bit about what the Omani landscape is like?
It's the perfect picture of the Arabian Nights. If you think of a Western childhood dream of Arabia, Oman is it.
Like something out of an Aladdin storybook.
It's Aladdin 101. It really is. And because Oman it's on the coast, so in certain places you literally have dunes. I used to call them sand dunes. I got told off. They say they're not sand dunes, they're dunes, because obviously they're made of sand. I'm like, okay.
Is this like the whole center median strip ATM machine?
So in some places you have dunes that run into the sea, literally further down towards Salalah. And where we are, for example, we have mountains behind us, behind this wall here, a range of mountains. Muscat is in a bowl of mountains. And then you cross, they've been built on now, but essentially you cross this sand dune plain. And then 15 minutes away, where we take Pup for a walk, is the sea. It's stunning. It's one of the most beautiful places.
Yeah.
We've been lucky to travel to quite a few places. It's probably one of the most beautiful places you've ever been. Would you say?
Beautiful, beautiful. And we can go, you do snorkeling trips and fishing trips here. And about 40 minutes out, you arrive at these beautiful islands, which is like you have arrived in the Maldives, just crystal clear.
Yeah.
Can see all the way like a swimming pool water. So yeah, just beautiful.
And
beautiful
there's turtles. They swim with the turtles and the manta rays. It's
wow.
amazing.
Okay, this is suddenly Oman is suddenly moving up my list of destinations.
I absolutely love Middle Eastern architecture. The mosques here, they are as much for me a work of art as they are a place of worship. They're stunning, and you have all these different types here that kind of they feed your eyes and your soul a bit. They are a bit special. Yeah. So even if just coming to look at the mosque, they're amazing. Really,
yeah,
really
they take huge amount of pride in their mosques and their architecture here.
Yeah.
And what we like about it is it's not as built up and as busy. Well, it's getting busier, but it's not like, you don't get the high-rise buildings like you do in Dubai. They want to try and keep it as more traditional as possible. At one stage they went to, well, still the rule is that you're not allowed to build buildings over a certain height, so you will never get those massive, huge, big high-rise skyscrapers. So it's still very kind of has a traditional feel, doesn't it?
Yeah, you have to come. We have a spare room here. You come.
Definitely.
I mean, you live on a mansion on a hill, so it sounds like you have plenty.
With 90% of the space we don't use. We only need one room to eat our toast and Marmite, don't we?
I mean, it's crazy to have a house this size, but it is fun. And that was one of my dreams when I first started coming over, because to see my mom, I'd drive her. She was always in apartments, very nice apartments, but I would be like, nah, I'm going to have a villa one day. One day I'm going to live in a villa in Oman.
And do many foreigners end up buying property in Oman?
I haven't heard of very many, but there are quite a few now, like these, like the wave development.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of expats have bought units in there. And at one stage it was very, very, very reasonable. I remember about 16 or 17 years ago, I actually was thinking of buying a plot of land where it is massively built up now, but it was very reasonable to buy a plot of land and build on. But so I think a lot of people do, but I personally don't know of anyone who has. Yeah, we would like to have a property here just to keep as an investment one day.
Also, it's an odd place to imagine yourself full time. I think it's a great place to come and play. I say that with all due respect to Oman. Play as in come and enjoy your time. But again, it's very different. It's an odd place to feel that you'd be for the rest of your life. Some people I'm sure would, but we kind of discussed that. We go, we're very happy here, but do you see yourself here forever? And we sort of not really. So then you wouldn't then necessarily make that investment kind of in a big home. Maybe you'd kind of buy and move on. So
Matt, what aspects make you both think that Oman is amazing for now, but possibly not a forever place?
So two things. One is us, because we still have so many other places we want to see and play in. So that's not so much Oman's responsibility. That's just what we want to do. We want to go to Botswana and hang there for a little while, back to Iceland, whatever. So that's us. And then the other thing is that it's still a relatively new country. It's only 50 years old. No, that's not true. In as far as it being westernized. So okay. Sultan Qaboos, who died 2 years ago, essentially, I mean, I'm kind of, shortening history, but dragged Oman out of tribalism, it was really, into this kind of modern era. So it's from that perspective, it's still very new. So therefore still kind of backwards. So and where the rest of the world is moving quickly, you'd think if you want to really grow a business or a platform, or for me, all the stuff, you can't be settled here as such. That's what I feel. Do you think? You'd possibly be somewhere like Dubai or Qatar, which is a bit more. Yeah, but I personally don't like Dubai at all. It's too I don't like it. It's too big, too kind of uprising. And I haven't been to Qatar to comment. But yeah, but so it's difficult to kind of grow here, but it's great to relax here, I would say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. It's quite in a lot of ways, an easy lifestyle. You know, you can, the weather helps as well, I think, except in the summer. The summer is not fun to be. Don't come in the summer.
No, well, I remember my first time I visited Dubai and I went on a tour and they showed us the air-conditioned bus stops and were like, for anyone using public transport, like you need to be in these essentially big glass fridges in summer or you will just collapse in the heat. I'm guessing then that you, especially in summer, cars are how you get around everywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bearable, definitely bearable, and you just stay inside. You won't go for a walk until later at night. Even at night, though, it can be 45 degrees at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
You know, so that it doesn't ever kind of cool down. But at least you're out of the sun. It's very, very hot.
But there's something nice about that, though, because certainly, I'm guessing in France, I would imagine. But certainly in the UK, everything is contrived and controlled by humans, right? The landscape and the weather is not a real thing. So you're always slightly disassociated to life, like natural life. Here, there's a very real risk that if you get it wrong, you die. Now that's extreme, right? But knowing that kind of outside is in control of your life is kind of cool. Because imagine if you lived in some kind of ice tundra, you have to take that into account, and that does connect you to your environment. That's another thing I love. I forgot that. That's another thing I love here. The Omanis are very much in tune with in some respects, their nature. You know, you'll see them, they will drive to the beach and sit out and have picnics, where kind of England, we don't really, we do it once and then you forget. Whereas they do use, you know, you see them at the wadis and the oasis and all that sort of stuff. And so they use it and they appreciate it. And I love that side of it.
Yeah.
And is there anything in particular you miss about life in the UK?
Oops.
No.
We've talked about how property prices are just crazy and petrol is so cheap. And so clearly that's not something you miss.
At the moment, and that's why we kind of half look at each other like that, it's because we don't. We often say that, do you miss home at all? No. And we're like, no. Now, maybe we will in another year, but at the moment, there isn't anything kind of we miss. We do genuinely live by that wherever you lay your hat as your home kind of stuff. We're sort of like that as people anyway. But at the moment, I don't. You?
No, I don't.
That's awesome.
I mean, you missed your friends and your family and things, and
Oh, just joking.
Or do you know?
But also for me, on a slightly different to Matt, is that I've got family all over the world. So now my mum's here, my dad's in South Africa, and I have a brother, although I haven't seen him for many years, in Australia actually. So I sometimes feel like I don't not belong anywhere, but I don't necessarily have a set home.
Yeah.
And then because Matt kind of lives the way that I kind of live, we've not got this pull anywhere as such. We like to discover new places, and we like to have a bit of an adventure, don't we?
Yeah.
I think
we're displaced nomads. We're unwanted all over the world, so we'll just kind of hang out wherever we are.
If anything, I probably have more of a pull towards Africa than I do anywhere else.
Yeah, that's next stop. But that would be another podcast. But yeah, that's next.
Yeah. Well, it sounds so exciting. You clearly have plans, and I really. It sounds like such an enviable life too, this kind of nomadic life where, as you say, wherever you are, wherever you hang your hat is home, and you're so relaxed and settled and leaning into that kind of lifestyle for yourselves.
Yeah, that phrase, leaning in, I like that. And I think that is important. I would say that to everyone, because it is a choice, you know, and it's to just move. This is not polishing our halos in any shape or fashion. If anyone's listening who wants to do it, you do have to lean in, just as you said. That's a great phrase. Firstly, you have to just go for it. And then you do have to lean in, because it can be uncomfortable at times if you overthink that. But if you just wake up and go, it's another day somewhere else, and lean in, I do like that a lot, then it makes it very enjoyable, I would say.
I was speaking to somebody who I work with who was saying that the other day, because the people do struggle here, and a lot of times it's the single people that come out that don't have anybody here. And I can imagine that it must be very difficult sometimes to be here on your own. I feel very lucky to have my mum here and to obviously have Matt with me, and we brought our Jack Russell Smudge with us, and that's one of the other things. Wherever we go in the world, we always have to check if it's easy to take her, because she will have
take
to
the
come with
dog.
us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming on your own would be very tricky. And this friend of mine was saying, you're just so lucky that you have somebody with you to go home to every night, every day, and have somebody there. She says it's very tricky sometimes to just go home and there's nobody to
Although that's debatable, like if you consider me lucky to come home to at the end of the day. I'm not sure.
I did offer to swap.
With such a strong foreigner community in Oman, are there support networks? Are there clubs and groups that people, particularly people moving there solo, can join to get that sense of community and feel and make friends?
Yeah, there are loads of groups here, loads and loads of groups. There's a massive South African community here.
So that's awesome.
Lots of South African groups. I tend to stay away from some of those groups for not all the time. Sometimes, great.
But I think you do have to. That's important, though. I think because the whole point of moving elsewhere isn't just to move one bubble to another. You want to try and of course you want support networks, right? But you don't just want to, you don't want to be a Londoner in Oman or wherever you choose to go. You want to break out and have those new experiences. So yeah, you're right. Be selective on how you use support groups. It's a little bit like the writing community for the authors. Once you go down that rabbit hole, you'll be so busy dealing with everyone trying to support you, you never actually write a book. And the same with support networks. You just got to, yes, lean on them a little bit, but then just get out and enjoy Oman or France or Australia or wherever you're choosing to go.
Yeah.
I have two final questions. One is, how easy is it to make friends and socialize, I suppose, with the locals in Oman?
So the Omanis are extremely, extremely friendly and welcoming. So you will be invited at the drop of a hat to their homes. In particular, our landlord, Mr. Ali, he lives in the attached villa to us, so we're right next door to our landlord, who he says we are his family. So
that's great.
We are family. Very, 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 very kind, very hospitable, very welcoming. So that's kind of
that's one of the kind of the key areas of Omani, and I would say Middle Eastern culture. I can only comment on Oman. Is the hospitality and the friendship and the kinship is massive. I love that here. I mean, you've done jiu-jitsu, and I've been in clubs all around the world, right? And I've been welcomed in jiu-jitsu. You're welcomed everywhere, but
it's a strong sense of family.
It's strong, but here even more so. If you could imagine that, even more so. It's wonderful.
And it almost is instantaneous, isn't it? They almost are your friend from the minute you meet them. It also obviously is how you treat them back. But so we've made quite a few sort of close friendships since being here. It's been kind of effortless really to do. So
well, that's really nice, because I know sometimes that can be the hardest part about being in a new place. And as you said, Matt, trying to break out of that expat bubble and actually make friends with locals and kind of break through into that kind of club,
It's nice. The only thing that as I say, there are some cultures that are so foreign, and that's usually because it includes the language. Like when you go to Japan, the language is so different. You mostly haven't seen any of it, and it's the same here in the Middle East. But that's another thing I've found, that if you make an effort, or even if you don't make an effort, I do make an effort to speak Arabic, to use the 3 words I know badly.
Over and over again.
Yeah, over and over again. But they do really make an effort to to help you, to teach you. They're very, very welcoming, and never make you feel Paris. Never make you feel like you've done something sinful for trying to speak their language. You know what I mean? And I still have those haunting memories of being in Paris. And you try to speak schoolboy French, and then some guy speaking to you in English and saying, "What do you want? A beef sandwich?" Yeah, no, okay.
Damn it.
Yeah, they don't do that here. So and they're very keen to help you.
And we've had such nice experiences. Just 2 examples. One day we were just driving around visiting. I think we were here on holiday. Weren't living here yet, but just to give you an example of how they are. And Matt needed to go to the bathroom, so we stopped, and he quickly ran through to see if there was a public toilet or whatever. And he ran past a family eating food. They were having their lunch, and he said, "Are there toilets here?" And they pointed to the toilets. He came back, and they said, "Come and join us for food." And I was with my mum waiting for him, and it took ages. And he got lost. Anyway, he came almost running back saying, "Sorry, I was invited to stop to have food with his family."
Yeah,
I just had a 3-course meal.
Yeah, you'll be walking on the beach, and people will be barbecuing, and they do like their barbecues on the beach here, and it's all they're allowed to do it. And you'll walk past, and we'll just say, "That smells delicious," and they'll say, "Come, please, please, please," or they'll start handing you plates of food and water. We were randomly given some ice cold water the other day because we were walking on the beach with the dog. And another time, we went for a trip, about a 2-hour drive to one of the, it's called Wadi Bani Khaled. It's beautiful, also one of these oasis-y places. And we met this local boy. I think he had one eye. He was blind in one eye, and he didn't speak any English, but he invited us to go into his village, and we were invited into their house, and we had Arabic coffee and dates
and coffee.
And no English, but there was no like his little old grandmother or mother was there, and you sit on the floor, and it's just like they're very, very peaceful people.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really, really good. So we do love that about here.
Yeah.
On the subject of sort of food, it's something I probably should have asked earlier, but I'm curious about alcohol, and are there restrictions? I went to Qatar late last year and was told, not that it was my priority, but we could drink alcohol in the hotels, in the hotel bars. It was allowed nowhere else. Is it a similar sort of rule in Oman? Is alcohol available, and do you have to be careful about where you choose to consume it?
Yeah, so they're also in the hotels, no problem, except during Ramadan. So during Ramadan time, you won't be able to have any alcohol, I think, up until a certain time of day, but I can't remember the rules now. There are bottle stores here, but they're not called, you don't know that they are bottle stores, and you have to have a license to get, so expats are allowed to apply for a license that then you have a certain amount to spend each month at these shops.
Oh, wow. So you have... So Omanis can't drink.
They not supposed to, but they do. They do a lot.
Insider secret.
And then you've got these expat villages. So there's one right near to my school. Actually, we sometimes go there after school or whatever, because it's literally a 2-minute drive away, called the Dolphin Club, and they sell alcohol there. That's where you see a lot of Omanis drinking alcohol. They do like their beer there. So there are various places that in some restaurants, like the Pava Real, the Mexican restaurant we like to go to, crazy place, they sell alcohol, but not everywhere.
And
you wouldn't necessarily take a beer down to the beach, for example, and
no, you definitely can't do public stuff.
Yeah, that would be, you get caught. That's a big problem.
It's a really, I don't drink at all, and it's really nice being in of course people drink, Right? I'm not an anti-drinker, by the way. I just don't drink. But my point is, it's really interesting being a culture that isn't a drinking culture. Yes, of course, you can drink and people do drink, but it's on the whole not a drinking culture, as we know in the kind of UK and certainly through Europe. So there are certain times in England where you choose where you go out because you know there'll be drunken-based fights, right? So that isn't the case here. And it's actually that lowered level of aggression, sometimes you have to remind yourself how much of a luxury that is.
And how much alcohol can influence that kind of behavior in society, right?
We were talking about this because you don't hear thumping kind of pop music or various music, right? So music, as we know, is very important for changing how you think or influencing how you think, and also so is alcohol or any other kind of intoxicants. And by not having those, it's amazing how peaceful a place can be. It's like, wow. And you don't realize how big an effect they have until you step out of a land that doesn't have them as the default. Of course they have them. You know, we're not in Saudi, so they are there, but they're not the first priority as they are, I would say, in the UK. And it's a really, it's lovely actually. And that's
and for someone like yourself, Matt, that doesn't drink, it must be so refreshing too, that social interactions and I guess a sense of belonging in a social setting doesn't revolve around whether you've got a beer in your hand.
And we had, at the club the other day, one of the guys had his wife had a new daughter. So instead of us sitting around after having a beer, you know, and kind of lewd jokes about pregnancy and all that sort of stuff, we sat around what's called halwa, which is, it's delicious. It's like a date paste with nuts in. I can't remember the details, but it's delicious. So we had that with coffee. And then the chat was just it was just lovely. It was just a really nice time. And it wasn't kind of, you know, disrupted by people getting a bit drunk and a bit out of hand. It was nice. I like that.
More of a coffee. They have a lot of coffee shops here. They call them coffee shops.
And not in the Amsterdam coffee shop style.
No.
Actual coffee.
Yeah, actual coffee.
And you'll often see mainly the men like to sit outside in these coffee shops, but it's a very different culture here, gathering wise.
Matt and Sheri, finally, I just would like to know what your top pieces of advice would be to others that might be coming to Oman for the first time.
Number one would probably be open-minded. Be open-minded.
Yeah, I was going to steal what your mum says.
Yeah.
Yes. Shez's mum says to all the new teachers, she's a teacher, says to survive here, you have to be certainly open-minded and resilient. And actually to use what you said about leaning into the experience. Don't push against it, lean into it, and then it'll work for you, I think. Would you agree? Yeah.
And just if you're going to work here, I don't know what other jobs are like. I've only been teaching here, but if you're going to work here, make sure you take time for yourself and try and get out and explore a little bit. There's so much to explore, not every weekend, but just try and explore, because that's when you will suddenly appreciate it. You will appreciate living here more when you go, wow, I can just go 2 hours down the road to a desert camp and have the most amazing
that's a good point.
Weekend away, or the sea and we could go snorkeling today in the next hour and be snorkeling and swimming with turtles. So
That's amazing. That's something I really hadn't put together with Oman, was like beautiful tropical swimming experiences.
That's what we would say.
Yeah.
Well, Matt and Sheri, thank you so much for coming on the Expat Focus podcast and sharing your experiences of life as expats in Oman. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. It's been lovely. Thank you very much, Carly.
That's it for this episode. For more insights like this, don't forget to subscribe to the Expat Focus monthly newsletter. You can sign up at expatfocus.com and explore our other podcast interviews on YouTube or however you like to listen. We love to hear from our listeners, so let us know what you think or what countries you'd like to hear more about. We are Expat Focus on social media. I'll catch you next time.